All right, here we go. We're doing this without Rex. We don't need Rex. I mean, we do, but we're doing it anyway. So Rex, if you're listening, come back. It only took Eric like 8 minutes to get the computer going and the microphones working.
Which is at least 8 minutes faster than what it would have taken me,
Yeah.
because I don't think I probably could have done it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, welcome to the AfterWord. The point of this time together is, at least hopefully, to expound a little bit on the text that was preached the Sunday previous, look into it a little more, not just to fill our heads with more knowledge, but to hopefully be growing our affections for Jesus. And we do that by asking 3 questions. We're trying to simplify it for our listener. 3 questions are, first, what do we see of the text? If whoever was preaching can give more insight into the text, that's great. If we have things we've picked up on, we can share that, and hopefully that's helpful for you. Second question is, what's to say about God, who God is, this text, what do we get from it in that way? And then third, how do we apply what we're actually seeing in God's word to our lives? Because we don't want it just to be an academic endeavor, but something that is impacting our hearts and our lives and our obedience to Jesus. And so that's our hope together. I'm joined by Eric, Jory, or whichever name you'd like to give.
I'm going to go by Rex today.
Rex. We're joined by Eric, Rex, and Kirsten. And I'm Vince. And I'm going to start with a question to get us all going. And the question is this. And this happens to be what we did last night. We made pizza last night on the grill, which is kind of like a summer.
Oh.
Yeah, we can talk about that more later, Jory. We're going to share our stories. You're making pizza. You only can put one topping on it.
Pepperoni?
No, hey. I haven't. Do you need a glass of water?
I have a tickle. I'm sorry.
You can put. Okay, good. Kirsten has gotten what I've had the last 8 weeks.
I'm at that age where you just like choke on your spit all of a sudden.
That's not safe.
I've been at that age for a while.
Yeah.
When does
All
that
right.
start?
We're going to stop and we're going to reframe this. You're making pizza. You have the opportunity to put one topping of your choice in all of the world, Eric. What one topping are you going to put on that pizza?
So pepperoni could be an option.
It could be, but he jumped to it before. It was like the Family Feud where you buzz the buzzer before you get through the question.
Wait, I was coughing. I didn't hear what you said.
Pepperoni. I think that's still my answer, actually.
Pepperoni.
But
Yeah.
I thought
is cheese and sauce like assumed?
Yeah,
or is
okay.
that like
A normal pizza, Jory.
Okay.
I
wasn't sure if
for
it's
sure
like-
you would say ground beef.
No,
Like,
no.
you're like
Yeah,
a vanilla guy, so I
No,
thought
no,
for
no, no,
sure
no,
you'd be
no,
like,
no.
I like ground beef on my pizza.
Hey,
That's
when
true.
you go through, you can order a pizza online, and
Yeah.
let's say you do a Supreme, but you can go through and edit that Supreme. I always take the ground beef off. That doesn't belong.
Okay, that's that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
Interesting.
ground beef is very Iowa though. Like that feels like
There's a
something.
lot of beef in Iowa.
wanna-
Ground beef should be off.
I want to meet the person who puts ground beef, unflavored, like unseasoned ground beef. All right, pepperoni. That's your.
Sausage for me.
All right.
Italian sausage.
Mhm.
All right. That's good.
Mhm.
I would go pepperoni too. Like if it was an additional ingredient outside pepperoni, then maybe get into some interesting territory. But if it's just one ingredient, cheese and sauce included, it would be
interesting territory.
pepperoni. But to mix it up, I don't know. Maybe I would say the little cupped pepperoni. I feel like that's one step above the
With
regular
hot honey.
pepperoni.
Fancy.
Have you gotten
Rooney.
into the hot honey craze?
I do, but that's a second ingredient. But you're right. The cupped pepperoni with hot honey it's very good. Is that Crazy Carl's or Totally 80s that does that?
We're not sponsored by either of those, by the way.
Should be though.
Yeah, we should be. Huh.
What about you, Vince?
Well, I'm gonna mix it up also.
ground beef?
Yeah, ground beef. Jalapenos.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Have you ever had a jalapeno pizza?
I mean, I have had jalapenos on pizza.
But it's always with pepperoni or
I know, but you
bacon.
all said pepperoni and sausage and all that.
But
Bacon's good. Bacon's good on pizza.
Bacon.
Oh yeah. If it was more than one, I would do pepperoni, jalapeno, and pineapple. I feel like that's the trifecta right
Can't
there.
do pineapple on a pizza.
Oh, even a grilled pizza?
I can't. No. It's all right for you. It's great. All right. Rex wouldn't be pleased. We're not going on about this. We should go like 5 more minutes.
I am pleased.
Eric is pleased. Let's get into it. Eric,
Yes.
and anyone else. Anything else that stands out, Eric, that you would say, wish I would have had more time to think about this, talk about this, cover this? Oh, actually, pause. Let me read the text. How about that?
Okay.
Let me read it, and then we'll jump into it. So, chapter 7, verses 1 through 17, here's what it says. After he had finished all his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. Now, a centurion had a servant who was sick and at the point of death, who was highly valued by him. When the centurion heard about Jesus, he sent to him elders of the Jews, asking him to come and heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they pleaded with him earnestly, saying, "He's worthy to have you do this for him, for he loves our nation, and he's the one who built us our synagogue." And Jesus went with them. When he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends, saying to him, "Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy to have you come under my roof. Therefore I did not presume to come to you. But say the word, and let my servant be healed. For I too am a man set under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it." When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him, and turning to the crowd that followed him, said, "I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith." And when those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the servant well. Soon afterward he went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a great crowd went with him. As he drew near to the gate of the town, behold, a man who had died was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and a considerable crowd from the town was with her. And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her, and said to her, "Do not weep." Then he came up and touched the bier, and the bearer stood still. And he said, "Young man, I say to you, arise." And the dead man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him to his mother. Fear seized them all, and they glorified God, saying, "A great prophet has arisen among us, and God has visited his people." And the report about him spread through the whole of Judea and all the surrounding country. This is God's word. Eric, now, what stands out, or what would you like to have had more time to talk through? Is there anything that you wish you would have had more time to spend on this or that? And then to the others, if anything stood out, love to hear it now.
Yeah, I think so. There's a few big themes through here that we shouldn't have time to explore more. One we barely touched on, and there's just the big theme of Luke in general, that the gospel's for all. And so you see clear outsiders here. The Roman centurion, this widow who lost her son, the gospel being extended to them in some radical ways. I mean, Jesus says the centurion, this faith he hasn't even found inside Israel. And so it's clear that this is a part of Luke's larger strategy, that Jesus is interacting with people who are not insiders. So we could have developed that a lot more and applied that a lot more. And I just think the other big thing is, as I've been thinking through it, is that all of this could be applied more also. The themes we did touch on, as well as the insiders and outsiders. So there's a lot of little things throughout it, but I think probably just the big theme we could have spent more time on.
Yeah, it's good. Anything else stand out? I'll say something that stood out to me as I was reading it. I think it's interesting. I don't have anything behind this or a question really, but maybe you saw something, Eric, as you studied. I think it's interesting, verse 15, after Jesus says, young man, I say to you, arise, it says, and the dead man sat up.
Yeah, dead men don't do that.
Yeah, which it's a clear choice from Luke to say it that way. And I just think it's interesting that that's Jesus is speaking into death, life, which is just who he is.
Yeah, it's super striking. And some of the reading I did says the same thing. Like Luke intentionally does that to say this doesn't normally happen.
Yeah,
but because of who Jesus is, we have something that you've never experienced before.
That's good. What else stands out? Anything else?
I don't know. I just think it's interesting to compare and contrast these two stories, how they're right next to each other. The centurion and the widow are very different people. Even the way they got connected to Jesus is very different. Like the centurion sent people, like reached out to Jesus directly, whereas I'm pretty sure like the widow never reached out to Jesus. You mentioned that in your sermon, Eric. So just interesting contrasts there, but there's a commonality of their faith.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting too. I mean, remember that Luke he's compiled these events. They're not necessarily accurate in their timeline. In fact, I mean, we see that even in verse 11 to bridge the gap between the two. Soon afterward, he went. So it's not even a direct link. So it seems like Luke has been intentional to put events next to each other to make the point or to make the jump from one thing to the next. Whether that's what we see here or not, I don't know. But it does seem that contrast, Jory, that you were talking about does seem like an intentional choice. And I think we'll see it even this coming week of the intentional choice of what comes next. Yeah. What else stands out?
I think you talked some about this in your sermon, Eric, but just the fact that Jesus marveled at the man and his faith. And just thinking about later on in the Gospels, Jesus says, you all are, talking to his disciples, you all are blessed because you've seen me, but blessed are those who have not seen me and still believe. And just thinking about, wondering, does Jesus still marvel at the faith of his children here now, especially those who have faith, like the centurion? He had never seen Jesus. He didn't know him, yet he still had faith. And so, I don't know, that just, it felt interesting to consider if that's still a reaction of Jesus in the faith of his children now.
Yeah, that's good. Eric, as you often do, you ask a question and then you answer the question. That's been your pattern. It's helpful for some, I'm sure, to see a question and then to have answers from that. And so Sunday you did the same thing to talk about the authority of Jesus, which we see it. I mean, it's clearly, and it even states that. The centurion talks about his authority and how Jesus has authority. We see the authority, and it comes out in in a cosmic way and in a compassionate way. Can you talk through those really quickly, those 2 points?
Yeah, the idea behind that is I think it's something that Luke has been building so far in his book. He's going to continue to build the authority of Jesus, which is unusual. It's something we've not ever experienced before. And it seems like he's just continuing to build upon that. And using that word is just borrowing the word that Luke himself used here, as you said in that first story. He doesn't use the word in the second story with raising the widow's son, and yet we still see his authority in a way that's new with reaching down into death, where death can't prevent the son from responding. And so that's just a theme that I chose to use. Sure. We could have used another theme of faith. You see that throughout here too. But I chose authority because I thought, one, it's helpful for me. Yeah. God, we have this big transcendent God, and he's also personal and loves us individually. Yeah. That's a biblical theme we see all the way through, and I think that's woven here too. That's
good. Yeah, definitely see the compassion. That's even a word that Luke uses, that he had compassion on her and said to the woman, "Do not weep." Which, by the way, does that translate? Would it be compassionate if I told you, Kirsten, do not weep? But I think the outcome of it is why, that what he's about to do to raise him up from the dead.
Well, I wondered a little bit, is Luke doing this somewhat because of the Beatitudes? Right? Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. Is this maybe a way that the widow has seen some of that, even though it's just a taste of it? I'm not sure.
We're going to see it in the next week too, where I think some of the same things are at play, where he's fulfilling what he talked about in the blessings and the woes, and what was prophesied about him coming. Yeah,
that's cool. I love too that Jesus wasn't at all confined to the cultural norms, like you talked about, like him touching a dead body, like that would have made him ceremonially unclean, and he wasn't even the tiniest bit hesitant to go and touch the young man and raise him. And it was the same with, you see it with the woman that's bleeding later on, and on, like the ceremonial laws. Jesus said, I've come to fulfill those, and so he wasn't hesitant at all to get dirty with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that his being clean overwhelmed and overpowered what could have happened to him and the uncleanness of others in their sin or in their ceremonial uncleanness.
Yeah, he imparted his own
Yeah.
cleanness onto everything else.
Well, we've touched on it some, but we'll go here with our second question. What's this say about who God is?
I mean, obviously, he's compassionate. And I did appreciate, Eric, that you also addressed in your sermon when you're in a place of confusion and wondering and questioning about God's compassion, because we don't always experience compassion like this. And I think sometimes these stories can be painful to read, because you do hope that you're going to experience the compassion of Christ in your own story in the same way that this mother did, and yet you often don't. And so there can be a tension there, but it's our own tension of expectation of how we're hoping that God is going to engage our hurts. I don't think it has as much to do about God's character, because his character is one of compassion.
Yeah, I mean, this was your sermon. What certainty do we have about Jesus' authority? And we know that his authority is cosmic and that his authority is compassionate. That was the whole structure of your sermon, Eric. But I think you really see those two things, and I think I'm struck at how I can struggle to hold both of those at the same time.
Yeah.
I can either see his cosmic authority that can do anything but doesn't really have much compassion, or he's super, lovey-dovey, compassionate Jesus, but not have all authority.
Yep.
But to really hold both of those, that's like full on display. I also think that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Like his compassion displays itself in healing in this passage, which is a certain type of compassion. It's not just sympathy or empathy, but there's an actual like action associated with it.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's what stands out. It was a minor point, and you talked about it earlier, but I'm consistently struck in Luke to see Jesus as the one who's moving toward people who everyone in that day would have said, don't do that, don't move. If you're going to be a good Jew, don't do that. And even in our day, and we'll get to this, like how do we apply this? Even in our day, we see it. I think that's who Jesus is, moving toward those who most people would say, we don't do that. That's not socially acceptable, or that's not the norm. But to see Jesus, what seems like, at least from Luke's retelling, seems very intentional that Jesus is doing that. Not just to make a show, but because these people matter to a God who's made them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of these two things, the cosmic authority, the compassionate authority, the cosmic is the one that hits me, I think, the most, because at times, our culture, people around us, this is one of my pet peeves. I think start to portray Jesus as somebody very different than Jesus who has an authority over everything. More of maybe I don't know if these words are right, but I'm going to use them anyway. More like a soft, weak, I just love you and I feel for you, but I can't do anything about it. Stick me in your pocket, bring me out when you want me. That kind of feel, that kind of Jesus, like a little Jesus maybe. Not the Jesus who reigns over the cosmos and has authority over absolutely everything. There's nothing that has authority over him. It hits something deep in me.
But I think the beauty in it is the paradox of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that he is preeminent over all things is shocking in itself, and even more shocking when we recognize that he's also moving toward the outcast.
Mm-hmm.
And his moving toward the outcast is so shocking because he is preeminent over all things. So I think those things in tandem, you remove one, the other one is minimized, at least to some extent, and you remove the other, and the other one's minimized too. They go together, and it's wildly shocking.
Yeah.
I think the Jesus is my boyfriend kind of caricature of
Is that what you said, Eric?
Jesus.
It's a good summary.
I think that's easier to rationalize disappointment That if Jesus is just this kind, gentle boyfriend type, character, and he didn't heal, or he didn't give me what I wanted, or I feel deeply disappointed, it's easier to rationalize that in your head if you can say, well, it's not because he doesn't have cosmic authority, it's because he doesn't have that anymore. And so I think the real tension comes in wrestling when we do recognize Jesus does have this cosmic authority, and he also has this deep compassion. And there's times that those two things don't seem to meet in the middle, at least not from our understanding of it. And so I think a lot of the times, I think the enemy plants seeds about the character of God often in our times of disappointment, in times when God didn't react or respond the way that we had hoped. And so I think a lot of the times those views of Jesus come out of times that we are hurt or disappointed with the way that God acted. And so it's the way that we rationalize, well, this must be the case. And so then that starts to bleed into culture, and that creates this whole view of who Christ is.
In fact, that's the very reason why open theism started. I don't know if that's still a thing. 20 years ago was a big deal. But that's why it started. There's tragedy, not being able to reconcile that God actually is sovereign over that, and just so leaning into the empathy and sympathy part.
What is open theism? I've heard it, but
It's the belief that, I'm going to add in here, Eric. It's the belief that, yes, God's sovereign, but he's working in his sovereignty as things are progressing. And he's not actively planning those things, but he's responding and reacting to the things that are happening in his sovereignty. So when tragedies happen in the world, it's not that God wasn't sovereign, but he didn't plan that to happen. He's now reacting and responding to that thing happening. Does that make sense? Anything to add to that?
It's just the idea the future is open. That's where it gets its name. Because they would argue that it's impossible for the future to not be open. And so to some degree, God is finding out with us what's going to happen. It all started by a pastor. He lost his family in a car crash. And so this is how he rationalizes who God actually must be. So it's a God who has sympathy and empathy for him, but he didn't prevent that because he didn't actually, he's not over it in a lot of ways. He's he's grand chess master. Like he can control things, I guess, that kind of way, but the future's open. There's all kinds of problems with it, but it was really trendy 20 years ago. I don't know if it's still around much now.
I think it's always been a thing. It just got a label at 20 years
that's
ago.
probably true. Yeah.
Well, and I think it is the same monster wearing a different dress today. So even even this idea that Jesus is this gentle, weak figure is, I think, born out of these false gospels that kind of erupt in culture, and they just keep morphing into different ideas, but it's the same deception. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. Well, we've kind of hit at it some in some different ways. Is there anything else we'd add to that final question of, so what do we do with this? How does this text hit us today? This was a few thousand years ago, and so it hit a people in a time and in a place, but how does it hit us today?
For me personally, it encourages me to approach God because of these two truths. Both he cares, he's compassionate for me, and also he actually has control over everything. And so there's a warmness. Yeah. Oh man, there's a warmness there, an invitation there that draws me in.
Yeah, that's good.
I think something that stands out to me is just the unexpected nature of God's kindness to, like, the mom in this story. Like, she had no expectation that Jesus was going to come and do this for her. She didn't ask for it, like you said, Jory. Like, it came out of nowhere. And so I think there are times, like the centurion, that we are asking Jesus for something, and at times he will answer that. And then there's also times that there's just unexpected kindness that comes from God. And so even when there is, that mom faced deep disappointment. She had lost her husband. She lost her only son. She was really facing a future of just being completely destitute. And Jesus came in unexpectedly and gave her great blessing and favor. And so, it's not a formula. We can't set our hope on Jesus coming in unexpectedly. But I do think that there are times that there is this blessing that Jesus gives that we don't see coming.
I think that's extremely important to remember, and I think about it in terms of prayer. I think we can get into this mindset where if we don't pray it and ask for it or pray it in the right kinds of ways, we may not receive it.
You do not have because you do not ask.
Right. And so, but that controls everything. And so then we go through some tragedy and think, oh, well, I didn't ask God to protect me, or I did something or whatever. But just to daily have the reminder of what is God doing right now around me, on me, in me, that I haven't asked for necessarily, but just in his kindness he's done. I think it's extremely helpful to consider that this woman was not asking for this. She didn't seek Jesus out, and Jesus in his kindness approaches her. That's good. I think the thing that stands out, I already started in on it earlier, but that Jesus is approaching people who the world wouldn't assume should be approachable. And I think that is the shock of that, and in a right way, the shock of that is compelling to me to consider in what ways am I modeling the character of God in that. How am I reaching out to those who would not be pursued generally? Yeah.
Well, and I think taking that maybe a level deeper, recognizing that I too was one that was
Sure.
not approached and not lovable. And
Yeah, but I think God was working in me and I pursued you. Is that what you meant?
Yes, that's what I was getting at. No.
No one else would. And I was like, out of compassion.
You took pity on me, and that
Not
was
at
it.
all.
Not how the story went, huh?
Not at all. It's the other way around. If anything else. She's like, no one's going to take that guy. Probably should.
Well, no, but I mean, I think I grew up in this church culture where it was like a wealthy white neighborhood, and we would go to these poor minority places and serve these poor people with the love of Jesus, which is great, but it put in this mindset of we're the ones that have the righteousness and we're extending it to these poor people that have a lot less than we do. Yeah. Which, there is absolutely gospel woven through all of that. So I don't fault this church that I grew up in, but I think what it unknowingly planted in me for a long time was this idea that I have the answers and I have to, I'm,
if you're wealthy and white, then you have the ability to do these things.
And so I think it's just continually reminding myself that, I was the unlovable and the unapproached and the undesired, and yet God still pursued me. And so I think it's just the gospel just levels the playing field altogether.
Yeah. How about you, Jory?
I was actually thinking similar thing that you were saying, Vince, about the just how different these people are. And I was thinking, and this is me kind of, the scripture doesn't actually say this, but I can almost imagine I wouldn't be surprised if the centurion had known what Jesus was going to do to the widow. He could be the one that was like, wait, why are you going to her? Or the widow could be the one being like, wait, Jesus, you're going to a centurion? Why would you go to, they could actually, so I don't know, even thinking about Jesus, it's the gospel to all, but even the people who receive it, they might be like, wait, why would Jesus go to that person?
Yeah.
I don't know, just thinking about the radicalness of Jesus and how he even uses that to, I don't know, I think about the beauty of the church, of the centurion and the widow worshiping the same Jesus together, being in township together, and just the radicalness of that, I think is just cool to think about.
That's good. All right, we did it. Any closing thoughts? Any last words to say? Any mic drops? Eric, mic drop?
I don't do
God
that,
shots.
God-
God shots here.
No. There's the mic drop. All right. Next week, we are moving on to chapter 7. Chapter 7, verses 18 through 35 is what we'll be looking at next week. Some messages from John the Baptist back and forth, and we'll get into what Jesus has there. Read ahead. Be thinking about it, talking about it, interacting in your township or with friends about it, and we will see you on Sunday. Adios.
Or Wednesday at the
Oh, little plug. Good job, Jory. If you've made it this far, Wednesday evening is our first monthly picnic together here at the building. So Wednesday,
June 10th.
the 10th. Just remember the smiling hot dog and hamburger walking arm in arm towards you as you come to the picnic. All right, adios.